Backstage at Wembley 1985, Queen's crew whispering, Brian May frozen mid-step, and in the middle of it all, Freddie Mercury and Mary Austin, face to face for the first time in months. Then came the sound, a single sharp crack, a sound no one expected to hear from the world's most charismatic man. People say it was a slap, others say it was an accident, a hand raised in frustration that went too far. No one can prove it, but the silence afterward was undeniable. Mary turned away, eyes wide, trembling. Freddie stood still, horrified by his own reaction. Within minutes she was gone, and the band, the staff, everyone backstage pretended nothing happened. But that night, Queen's show glowed with strange intensity. Freddie sang Love of My Life as if confessing a crime. Rumors spread quickly, but no one ever asked the question out loud. Why would Freddie Mercury, a man known for his tenderness toward Mary Austin, ever raise his hand to her? Before you hear this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to tell you will reveal the darkest period of Freddie Mercury's life and the truth about the night he lost control due to jealousy. In the weeks leading up to that concert, Freddie was unraveling. The public saw glamour, champagne, costumes, endless energy, but privately he was spiraling. He hadn't slept properly in days. His hands shook when he poured wine. He'd started drinking before sound check just to calm his nerves. Friends later said Freddie seemed haunted, obsessed with Mary again, even though she had moved on. He told his assistant Peter Freestone, "She's the only person who really knew me." But fame had changed everything. Mary was building a life of her own, far from the spotlight that devoured Freddie. Inside he was terrified. Terrified that he'd been left behind. That the one person who saw him as a human being had finally stopped seeing him at all. Pressure had been building for months. The fans wanted a god. Freddie wanted love. And gods, as he once said in an interview, don't get to be loved. That night, the two worlds collided, the legend and the man was losing. Hours before the show, Freddie was in his dressing room when the phone rang. It was a journalist from a London tabloid, fishing for a quote. "Freddie, any comment on Mary Austin's engagement to Piers Cameron?" The words froze him. Engagement to whom? The receiver slipped from his hand. Peter Freestone rushed in, but Freddie just stared at the floor. He muttered, "She didn't tell me." Minutes later, he ordered everyone out of the room. According to one crew member, bottles smashed against the wall. A mirror cracked. Freddie refused to rehearse. He kept whispering her name, Mary, Mary, Mary. Like a mantra he couldn't escape. When Roger Taylor came to check on him, Freddie snapped, "Don't talk about her." But even anger couldn't mask what was underneath. Heartbreak and humiliation. He had been her world once, and now she belonged to another man. By showtime, his makeup artist said his hands wouldn't stop shaking. What no one knew was that Mary Austin herself was at Wembley that night, quietly visiting the band before the show. It happened minutes before the curtain rose. Mary entered the dressing room to congratulate the band, a small smile hiding her nerves. Freddie saw the engagement ring before she said a word. For a moment he froze, then walked up to her, eyes locked on the diamond. "So it's true," he said quietly. "You said yes," Mary nodded. "Freddie, please. I wanted to tell you myself." Witnesses later described the tension as unbearable. Freddie pacing like a caged animal. "You promised you'd never leave me," he whispered. "You said you'd always be mine." Mary tried to reach for his hand. "You'll always have me. Just not the same way." And that's when it happened. A blur of movement, a raised hand, a stunned silence. Whether it was a slap or a flinch that went too far, no one can say. Mary gasped, stepped back, and Freddie froze, his face draining of color. For a man who could command stadiums, he suddenly looked small, terrified, as if realizing he'd just crossed a line he could never uncross. No one spoke. Not Peter, not Brian, not Roger. The air was heavy, the way it gets before a thunderstorm. Freddie whispered something no one caught, then turned away, trembling. Mary left quietly, escorted by a crew member. Outside, 70,000 fans were chanting his name, oblivious. Inside, Freddie Mercury, the man who lived for adoration, was crushed by disgust. He pressed his palms to his face and muttered, "What have I done?" Brian May later said, "We didn't talk about it. We couldn't. It was too painful." The show began minutes later, as if nothing had happened. Freddie stepped on stage, smiling, his eyes glittering under the lights. But anyone watching closely could see it. The tremor in his hands, the haunted look every time he sang Love of My Life. That night, His performance was electric, maybe the best of his career. But behind the roar of the crowd, there was only one sound echoing in his head, the sound of that moment. After the show, Freddie didn't go to the after-party. He locked himself in the hotel bathroom, ran cold water in the tub, and stared at his reflection. He couldn't look himself in the eye. According to Peter Freestone, the next morning the bathroom mirror was shattered. Freddie told him, "I saw a monster last night." He sent flowers to Mary's flat but received no reply. The tabloids had already picked up whispers of a backstage fight, but no names, no proof. Still, the guilt ate him alive. He stopped eating for days. He canceled interviews. Even his laughter sounded forced, brittle, desperate. Friends said he would start drinking in silence, staring at nothing. The man who once said, "I'll be a legend," now feared he'd become a headline for all the wrong reasons. And the only person who could forgive him wasn't answering his calls. Within weeks, London's music circles were buzzing. Some said Freddie had lashed out in jealousy. Others claimed Mary provoked him, or that it never happened at all. But to those who knew him best, it didn't matter whether the slap was real. What mattered was why the rumor felt believable. Freddie's entire life had become a balancing act between confidence and collapse. He could be magnetic on stage and broken off it, charming one moment, unreachable the next. He retreated into the studio, burying himself in work on a kind of magic. Brian May later recalled, "He was harder on himself than anyone else. That's how he punished himself." Behind the bravado, he wrote darker lyrics, quieter melodies, songs that sounded like confessions disguised as anthems. And somewhere in that chaos he began to understand. He hadn't been angry at Mary. He'd been angry at himself for not being the man she could love without fear. Months later, a letter arrived at Mary Austin's flat. It was handwritten, elegant, every word heavy with remorse. "My dearest Mary," it began. "I'm sorry for every word, every moment, every tear. I hurt you because I was afraid you'd stop loving me, and I'd have nothing left of the real me." He signed it not as Freddie Mercury, but simply Fred. Mary kept that letter private, showing it to no one. But friends say it changed everything. They met quietly weeks later, without press or witnesses. No screaming, no accusations, just silence, understanding, forgiveness. Freddie wept in her arms, repeating, "I'm sorry." Mary told him, "You don't need to apologize anymore. You just need to live." That night, for the first time in months, Freddie slept peacefully. He would later tell Jim Hutton, "Mary saved me again. She always does." From that moment, their relationship transformed. Mary didn't return as a lover. She returned as something deeper. Freddie began calling her "my eternal friend." When he was diagnosed years later, she was the first person he told. They rebuilt their bond on truth instead of obsession. He trusted her with his will, his home, his legacy, and ultimately his ashes. Those who saw them together in the late 80s said it was peaceful now. No drama, no tension, just quiet loyalty. But every November 24th, Mary Austin disappears for 24 hours. Some say she visits his resting place. Others think she just sits alone with the memory of the man who once lost control out of love. Whatever happened that night in 1985, forgiveness turned it from scandal into something deeper, a lesson in the fragility of even the greatest hearts. Decades later, the story of that alleged slap remains a whisper, a mystery carved into rock and roll folklore. Was it real? Maybe, but whether fact or rumor, it reveals something raw about Freddie Mercury, the man behind the legend. He wasn't perfect. He was human, terrified of losing the one person who made him feel whole. And in that fear, he became every one of us who's ever loved too deeply, too desperately. Freddie once said, "I'm just a musical prostitute, darling." But he was more than that. He was a man who felt everything, too much, too fast, too honestly. Mary forgave him, and in doing so, she gave him back his soul. When we watch him now, arms open, eyes shining, we don't see the slap. We see redemption, because even the brightest stars cast shadows. And Freddie's shadow still teaches us that love, in all its chaos, is the most human thing of all. If you felt this story, hit subscribe, drop a comment about your favorite Freddie Mercury moment, and share this video to keep his legacy alive. Because some stories aren't just history, they're reminders that even legends can break and still shine.